Hey, what's going on guys? Jake Newbie here. Welcome back to another video. Now, today we're going to be comparing the Zhiyun Crane 2 to the new Zhiyun Crane Plus. And if you're new here, I make videos all about filmmaking and photography, so if that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing. So as you all probably know, over the past few years, Zhiyun Tech has come into the gimbal market and produced their own gimbals for cell phones, point and shoots, mirrorless cameras, and even larger DSLRs. They even did something no other gimbal manufacturing company had done up until now. With the release of the Crane 2, they included a follow focus system that you control from the side of the handle itself. Since then, DJI has announced its new Ronin S, which will include a similar feature, and I'm sure as time goes on, we'll start to see this feature appearing on gimbals more and more. But the question is, what has Zhiyun done with the new Zhiyun Crane Plus? Over all the previous iterations of the Crane Plus has been built around being intelligent and useful for more than just getting super smooth gimbal shots. The Crane Plus now features new gimbal modes that allows this device to become much more of a multi-purpose tool rather than just a gimbal. And the first feature to mention is the new object tracking mode. Using the Zhiyun Play app, you can now select an object in frame using your phone as a viewfinder. And the Crane Plus will lock onto an object and will stay locked on it as you move around it. Personally, I think this feature is enough for me to actually start looking at the Crane Plus as a competitor with the Crane 2. Using this feature will allow you to focus on a subject and get that super nice moving background parallax that everybody loves. With the Crane 2, you could pull off kind of a similar effect, but you'd have to rely on doing it manually and just doing your best to keep your subject in the same part of the frame as you move. Now, I do believe you could do a similar tracking feature through the app with the Crane 2, but in my experience, it never really worked all that well. Another feature to mention is the new Nightlapse mode. Since the Crane Plus ships with a mini tripod that screws into the bottom of the handle, you can set the gimbal down and create a long exposure time lapse that actually moves left to right or right to left throughout the duration of the time lapse. Now, in the past, you could really only achieve effect like this with a DSLR, intervalometer, and some sort of device that would turn your camera as the time lapse went on, but Zhiyun has made it so all of this can be achievable just using your camera and the Crane Plus. Now, the last new feature to mention is the POV mode. With the POV mode, you can actually tilt the handle and the camera and gimbal will follow, keeping everything in a straight line. It allows the camera to rotate instead of keeping it completely level. On the Crane 2, you could achieve an effect somewhat similar using the joystick, but it isn't nearly as easy as just moving your arm with the Crane Plus. Moving on to the actual gimbal itself, the Crane Plus has a maximum payload of 5 pounds, while the Crane 2 has a max payload of 7 pounds. Now, for me as a Sony shooter, either one of these two gimbals will be fine since the mirrorless bodies are so small. However, if you are a Canon shooter and you'll be using, bulky L-series lenses, make sure to pay attention to the total weight of your setup. And one of the best parts about the Crane 2 was the interface with the screen that let you know what mode you were in, and it also allowed you to change camera settings if you were a Canon shooter. With the Plus, you do lose the screen, but you get the classic joystick that comes on the V2 version of the Crane. You can still switch between modes, clicking the different buttons on the handle, but again, you are still missing the small screen that comes on the Crane 2. Now, as a Sony shooter, this next feature really doesn't matter, but it is important to Canon shooters. The most exciting part about the Crane 2 was the announcement of the follow focus feature that allowed you to control focus from the handle. And as I'm sure you know, the Crane Plus does not have this feature, but as a non-Canon shooter, having the feature on my Crane 2 doesn't really matter since it's only compatible with Canon cameras. Size-wise, the Crane 2 is quite thicker than the Plus, but I wouldn't necessarily count that as a bad thing, especially if you prefer a thicker handle to grab onto. This also allows the Crane 2 to have slightly better battery life than the Plus since there is more room for larger batteries. Lastly, and probably most importantly, the Plus is much cheaper than the Crane 2, coming in at $569 US, while the Crane comes in at $750 US. Overall, both of these gimbals are quite extraordinary and will be great options for filmmakers and hobbyists. But I am curious to know what you guys think of these two gimbals, so please let me know which gimbal you prefer and why down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button on your way out, and we'll see you in the next one.